Hey, howdy everybody. Welcome back for another chapter of The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible, a free market odyssey by Ken Schooling. Today we're going to hear chapter 29, Newcomers. Love the quote this time. Love thy neighbor, Jesus Christ. You think you have problems? Said a haughty-looking woman, clearly distressed that she was chained to people she considered her inferiors. On the verge of tears, she pressed a fine lace handkerchief to her eyes and said, "When the press finds out that I, Madam Innes, am under arrest, my husband's career will be finished. I never thought I was doing anything so wrong. What would you have done?" Embracing a young couple chained next to her, Madam Innes continued, "Years ago, I had a big home, 3 growing kids, and I wanted to get back to my career. My neighbor traveled a lot, so I asked him to keep an eye out for people who might help with my household. He highly recommended Jayo and Shar, so I hired them immediately. Shar is wonderful with the garden and carriage. She can fix anything around the house and does endless errands. And Jayo, such a dear, has been my lifesaver. He's so good with the children. He's always there when I need him. He cooks, cleans, cuts hair, does 1,001 chores better than I ever could. My boys are crazy about his cookies. When I get home, I can relax with my husband and play with the children." "Sounds like help that everyone would love to have," said Jonathan. "What went wrong?" "Everything was just fine at first. Then my husband got a new appointment to head the Bureau of Goodwill. His opponents investigated our finances and found that we had never paid the retirement taxes for Jayo and Shar." "Why not?" asked Jonathan. "With taxes high and my earnings low, we couldn't afford to at the time, and they're not allowed to collect the retirement benefits anyway." Jayo spoke up, saying, "Report is very trouble for us." Shar poked Jayo and whispered, "Careful, Jayo, much risk." To his wife, Jayo replied bravely, "Madam help us, we help her now." Then to Madam Innes he said, "You save our lives. We come from home island of El Sadamor. Very bad hunger and very bad war. We no choice. Leave, hunger or be killed. So we come Corumpo. Madam no help us, we die." "This is true," said Shar in a mild voice. "Now sorry we give Madam trouble." Madam Innes heaved a great sigh and said, "My husband will lose his promotion to the Bureau of Goodwill and maybe his old job as well. He has been the head of the Us First Commission, promoting national pride. His enemies will accuse him of hypocrisy." "Hypocrisy?" asked Jonathan. "Yes, the Us First Commission discourages newcomers." "Newcomers?" repeated Jonathan. "What are the old newcomers?" "Old newcomers? That's the rest of us," said Madam Innes. "This is an island. Over the years, all of our ancestors came from somewhere else as newcomers, either fleeing oppression or trying to improve their lives. But newcomers are recent arrivals. They're banned by the pull-up-the-ladder law." Jonathan swallowed uneasily. He dared not think of what would happen if the authorities discovered that he was a newcomer as well. Trying to sound only mildly interested, he asked, "Why don't they want newcomers?" The fisherwoman interrupted. Newcomers are allowed if they spend money and leave right away. They're tourists or businessmen. But the Council of Lords worries about poor newcomers, ones who might stay. Many work harder, longer, cheaper, smarter, or at greater risk than the locals. They'll do chores that Madam Innes wouldn't touch." Hold on just a minute, said Jack. There are plenty of legitimate complaints against newcomers. Newcomers don't always know the language, the culture, or the manners and customs of our island. I admire their spirit. They're gutsy to risk their lives to come here as strangers, but it takes time to learn everything, and there's not enough space. It's more complicated than when our ancestors fled the far islands. Jonathan thought about all the space he had seen on Corumpo, all the uninhabited forests and open fields. Most people avoided the wilderness and preferred the crowds and activity of city life. Then Madam Innes answered Jack. My husband made those very same arguments against newcomers. He always said that newcomers must first learn our language and customs before they can be allowed to stay. They must also have money, skills, self-sufficiency, and they shouldn't take up any space. My husband drafted a new law to identify and deport people that didn't qualify, but there was a glitch. The description of illegal newcomers applied more to our own kids than to talented people like Jayo and Shar. Two men in stiff uniforms barged through the doors, each man being tugged by a ferocious black dog on a leash. They marched directly up to Madam Innes, who shrank in fright from the dog's heavy panting and drooling fangs. One of the men motioned for the guard to unlock her leg irons. In a deep monotone, he read from a document. Dear Madam Innes, we wish to extend. He paused to show the letter to the other man, whispered, then started again. Dear Madam Innes, we wish to extend our sincere apologies for this unfortunate misunderstanding. Madam Innes, you can be assured that this whole matter is being taken care of at the highest levels. Visibly relieved, she hastily followed her escorts down the long hall without daring to look back at Jayo or Shar. The rest watched in dead silence that was broken only by the clank of a restless chain. Once Madam Innes was out of sight, the guards turned on Jayo and Shar, unlocking and separating them from the group and from each other. Roughly shoving them in the opposite direction, the guards yelled, Off you go, scum! Back to where you came from. We no harm, pleaded Shar. We die. That's none of my doing, grumbled the guard. The fisherwoman waited until they turned down the stairwell and the door slammed behind them. Then she mumbled under her breath, Yes, it is. Jonathan trembled slightly, thinking of the fate that lay ahead for the couple, and maybe even for himself. He looked up and asked the woman, So everyone on this chain is here because they weren't allowed to work? Pointing down the road to one young man whose face was buried in his hands, the woman responded, If you look at it that way, he's the exception. The authorities insisted that he sign up to work as a soldier. He refused, so he got locked on this chain with the rest of us. Jonathan couldn't quite see the face of the young man, yet he wondered why the town elders would require one so young to do their fighting for them. Why do they force him to be a soldier? The fisherwoman answered Jonathan. They say it's the only way to protect our free society. Her words echoed in Jonathan's ears amidst the metallic noise of the chains. Protect from whom? Asked Jonathan. The woman glowered. From those who would put us in chains. That is the end of chapter 29. That was not an easy chapter to read. The spelling, the grammar, and the punctuation were all in order, but the message was stark. Probably the heaviest of all the chapters I've read so far. Well, we will start with chapter 30 tomorrow, and it looks like there are only about 11 chapters left to go. I hope you're enjoying this book. I know I am. And I hope you all have a great day. See you soon.